My son died 6 years ago, or so I believed. Every January, I sent his wife, Angela, $25,000 money I earned running a small construction company with aching hands and sleepless nights. I did it for my granddaughter, for my wife who died of grief believing our son was gone, and for the son I thought I had already buried. Then one quiet afternoon at the park, my 8-year-old granddaughter grabbed my sleeve and whispered, "Grandpa, Daddy's not really gone. Grandpa, come to the house and see." I did exactly what she said, and what I saw there nearly stopped my heart. I'm Carl Brennan, 58 years old, and for the past 6 years, I've been doing my best to hold what's left of my family together. That means every other Saturday I take my granddaughter Sophie, she's 8 to Riverside Park for ice cream. Chocolate chip for me, strawberry swirl for her. It's our routine, has been since her father died. Michael was my son, my only child. 6 years ago, he died in a construction accident on the Interstate 95 project. Heavy machinery malfunction, they said. Crushed instantly. The body was too badly damaged for an open casket. We cremated what was left. 6 months later, my wife Dorothy died too. The doctors called it a heart attack, but I knew the truth. She died of a broken heart. Losing Michael killed her just as surely as that accident killed our son. So now it's just me, Sophie, and her mother Angela, my daughter-in-law. Angela's raising Sophie alone, and I help out. $25,000 a year, every January for the past 6 years. It's what Michael would have wanted. It's what family does. That September afternoon at the park seemed normal enough. Sophie sat beside me on our usual bench near the old oak tree, kicking her light-up sneakers and telling me about her art class. She'd drawn a picture of a house. I told her I was proud. She smiled that same smile Michael used to have, and for a moment, everything felt okay. Then she stopped smiling. "Grandpa." Her voice dropped to a whisper. She glanced over her shoulder toward the playground, then leaned in close. "Daddy's not really gone." I blinked. "What?" "The man Mommy talks to. He told her Daddy's in the dark place." Her little hand gripped my sleeve, and I saw something in her eyes I'd never seen before. Fear. "Please come see." My chest got tight. "Sophie, what are you talking about?" I drew a picture. "Want to see it?" She pulled away suddenly, digging in her backpack. "I draw him all the time in the dark place." She handed me a crayon drawing. It showed a stick figure man behind what looked like bars or lines. Below it, in careful 8-year-old handwriting, "Daddy in basement." "Wait, Sophie. If something's wrong, please, Grandpa, just come see." She wouldn't say another word. The drive to Angela's house was quiet. Sophie stared out the window, clutching her backpack like it was keeping her safe. I wanted to ask more questions, but the look on her face told me not to push, not yet. Angela's house is a modest 2-story on Maple Street. White siding, black shutters, a lawn that's always a week past needing a mow. I'd helped her with the down payment 3 years ago. Another check I'd written without thinking twice. She was waiting on the front steps when we pulled up. "You're late," she said flatly. "Traffic?" I lied. Sophie was already out of the car, head down, hurrying toward the door. Angela barely looked at her. "Go inside and start your homework." She didn't say goodbye to me, just disappeared into the house. I stood there on the sidewalk, watching through the window as Sophie sat down at the dining room table. Angela walked right past her, phone pressed to her ear, not even glancing her way. Something twisted in my gut. "Angela," I called out before she could close the door. "Is everything okay with Sophie?" She shrugged. "She's fine." Why wouldn't she be? She just seemed quiet. "She's 8. Kids get moody." She paused, then added, "Hey, any chance you could send next year's payment early? Got some expenses coming up?" Next year's payment? It was September. I wouldn't normally send the money until January. What kind of expenses? House stuff. You know how it is. She wasn't looking at me. "Forget it. January's fine." The door closed. I got back in my car and sat there, engine running, hands gripping the steering wheel. My mind was racing. $25,000 a year, $150,000 over 6 years. That was a lot of money for a woman who barely said thank you. A woman who couldn't even look her own daughter in the eye. I drove home as the sun set, painting the Pennsylvania sky orange and purple. The house was quiet when I got there. It's been quiet since Dorothy died. Some nights I still reach for her in my sleep, forgetting for half a second that she's gone. That night I couldn't even think about sleep. I kept replaying every interaction I'd had with Angela over the past 6 years. The way she'd asked for money but never sent updates about Sophie, never invited me to dinner, never called just to talk. She'd moved on fast after Michael died, started dating someone new within a year. I'd told myself everyone grieved differently. But what if I'd been wrong? What if there was something I'd missed? Michael's urn was sitting on my mantle downstairs. I'd kept it there for 6 years because I couldn't let go. Couldn't scatter his ashes like Dorothy had wanted. It was all I had left of my son, or so I thought. I lay awake that night staring at the ceiling. What did Sophie mean? What was this dark place she kept drawing? The night they told me Michael was dead, I didn't believe them. It was March 22nd, 2018. Two officers stood on my front porch at 1100 in the morning, their faces carefully neutral in that way cops learn to do when they're about to destroy your world. There's been an accident on the I-95 project. Your son's equipment malfunctioned. Equipment, not machinery. Like using a distant word could soften what came next. He's at the hospital? I asked, already reaching for my coat. Dorothy was behind me, gripping my arm. The officer shook his head. Sir, I'm sorry. There was a crush injury. Your daughter-in-law identified him from personal effects. That's when Dorothy's knees buckled. The details came in pieces over the following days. Michael had been operating a crane when the hydraulics failed. The boom came down, crushing the operator's cab. By the time emergency crews pulled him out, there wasn't much left to work with. They said he died instantly. They said he didn't suffer. I've never been sure if that was true or just something they tell families. The funeral was closed casket. Had to be. Angela stood beside me at the service, Sophie in her arms. She was barely 2 years old then, and I remember thinking how wrong it was that my son's baby would never remember her father's face, never hear him laugh, never know how Michael used to sing off-key in the shower or how he cried during sappy commercials. They gave us an urn, simple brass about the size of a shoebox. It sat on our mantle for a week before Dorothy could even look at it. We should scatter his ashes at the lake, she said one morning, voice hollow. Remember how much he loved it there. We'd spent every summer at Lake Rayburn when Michael was growing up. He'd learned to swim there, caught his first fish, kissed his first girlfriend under the dock. Dorothy was right. It was the perfect place. But then Dorothy died. 6 months after we buried our son, my wife's heart gave out, just stopped. The doctors called it cardiac arrest, but I knew better. You can die of a broken heart. I watched it happen. She got thinner, quieter, more distant every day until one morning I woke up and she was gone. Found her in the kitchen, collapsed by the coffee maker, the same one Michael had bought us for Christmas 3 years earlier. After that, I couldn't bring myself to scatter the ashes, couldn't let go of that urn. It felt like letting go of Michael all over again, and I'd already lost too much. So it stayed on the mantle. Still does. 6 years now. Brennan Construction kept me going. The company has been in my family for 30 years. My father started it back in 1994, and I took over when he retired. It's nothing fancy, just a small outfit that does residential work around the county. The kind of place where people know your name and pay their bills on time. Mrs. Patterson has us redo her kitchen every 5 years like clockwork. Old Joe Fletcher gets his garage roof patched every winter. They all knew Michael. They all came to the funeral. After Dorothy died, the business became my anchor. I'd be on site at 6 every morning, supervising crews, handling estimates, dealing with suppliers. The routine kept me sane, kept me from thinking too much about the empty house waiting for me at the end of each day, and I kept my promise to Michael. Before he died, he'd made me swear that if anything ever happened to him, I'd take care of Sophie, make sure she had everything she needed. So I did. $25,000 a year sent to Angela every January like clockwork. It wasn't about the money. It was about keeping my son's memory alive, about making sure Sophie had opportunities, stability, a future. Angela never said much about it, a quick thanks in a text message maybe. No updates on how the money was being used. No invitations to see Sophie more than our every other Saturday ice cream trips. I told myself she was just private, that grief made people withdraw. But Sophie's words at the park kept circling back. Daddy's not really gone. I stood in front of Michael's urn that night after driving home from Angela's house. Just stood there in my living room, staring at it in the dim light from the street lamp outside. 6 years I'd kept this thing. 6 years I'd honored it like it was sacred. What if something was wrong? What if Sophie knew something I didn't? I thought about the accident again, the details that never quite added up. How Michael had been operating equipment he'd used 100 times before, and somehow there was a malfunction on a clear day. How the damage had been so severe there was nothing left to identify. How Angela had been the one to confirm it was him. I'd never questioned it. Why would I? Angela was his wife. She loved him, and I was drowning in my own grief, trying to keep Dorothy alive, trying to keep myself from falling apart. But now, standing there in the quiet house with Sophie's frightened voice echoing in my head, I started to wonder, what had I missed? What was I still missing? For 6 years, I'd kept my promise, I'd sent the money, I'd trusted Angela, I'd believed the story they told me about the accident and the crush injury and the urn full of ashes. But now Sophie's words made me wonder, what was I really paying for? 3 days later, I'm at the Henderson job site when this woman walks up to me. The days after Sophie's warning at the park had been restless. I went through the motions, checking job sites, meeting with clients, reviewing estimates, but my thoughts kept circling back to her words. Daddy's not really gone. I tried to dismiss it. Maybe she was confused, the way children sometimes are about death. Maybe she'd been having dreams, mixing up reality with imagination. That's what I told myself. Anyway, Tuesday mornings at construction sites are predictable. Crews show up at 700, materials get delivered by 800, and I spend the morning making sure everything runs smoothly. I know the rhythms, they know mine. The woman appeared at the Henderson job site around 9:15. I noticed her immediately because she wasn't supposed to be there. Mid-30s, dark hair pulled into a ponytail, wearing jeans and an expensive-looking leather jacket. She moved with confidence, like she knew exactly where she was going. She walked straight to where I was reviewing blueprints with my foreman. "Tommy, excuse me," she said. "Are you Carl Brennan?" "Yes. Can I help you?" "I hope so." Her voice was clipped, not rude, just distant. "I'm looking for information about an accident that happened 6 years ago on the Interstate 95 project. Michael Brennan." My blood went cold. That was my son. Her expression didn't change. "I'm sorry for your loss. I work for an insurance company. We're reviewing some old claims and there are some issues with the paperwork." "What kind of issues?" "The kind that suggest the accident might not have happened the way it was reported." I set down the blueprints. Tommy took the hint and walked away, giving us privacy. "Ma'am, I buried my son 6 years ago. I don't know what you're looking for, but Mr. Brennan," she interrupted. "When was the last time you saw Michael's death certificate?" The question caught me off guard. Why would I need to see it? Because the signature on the one filed with the state doesn't match the signature of the coroner who was supposed to have signed it. The construction site noise seemed to fade away. The hammering, the power tools, the shouting of the crew, it all became background static. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying someone forged that death certificate. And if they forged that, what else might they have forged?" She handed me a business card. "My name is Detective Lisa Morrison. I'm not with an insurance company. I'm with the State Police Bureau of Criminal Investigation. We've been looking into a pattern of fraudulent deaths, insurance payouts, and document forgery. Your son's case came up in our investigation." I stared at the card. "You think Michael's death was fake?" "I think there are enough questions to warrant a closer look." "Have you had any recent contact with your daughter-in-law?" "I see her every other week when I pick up my granddaughter, and I send her money, $25,000 a year." Detective Morrison's eyebrows went up. "How much total?" $15,000 over 6 years. She pulled out a notepad. "Mr. Brennan, I need to ask you some questions, and I think you might want to sit down for this." We sat in my truck, doors closed, while Detective Morrison laid out what the investigation had uncovered. "We've been tracking a network of people who stage accidents and deaths for insurance money. Fake death certificates, forged coroner signatures, bribes to morgue workers. It's a sophisticated operation, and it's been running for years. You think Angela is part of this? We think Angela Brennan collected a $120,000 life insurance payout on your son 6 years ago. We also think she's been collecting $25,000 a year from you under false pretenses." My hands were shaking, but I saw the accident report, the photos of the equipment. The accident was real. But the victim wasn't your son. The world tilted. I gripped the steering wheel to steady myself. "What do you mean?" "We think someone else died in that accident. Someone without family, someone whose death wouldn't be closely scrutinized. Your son's identity was stolen and applied to that victim. So where is Michael?" Detective Morrison's expression was grim. "That's what we need to find out. But based on what your granddaughter has been saying and some other evidence we've gathered, we think he might still be alive." The pieces started falling into place. Sophie's drawings of Daddy in the dark place, her whispered warnings about Mommy talking to a man, the way Angela never wanted me around the house for long. "My granddaughter knows something," I said. "We think she does. Children see things adults miss. And if your son is being held somewhere, she might be the key to finding him. Held somewhere. Mr. Brennan, if Angela staged your son's death for insurance money, and she's been collecting money from you for 6 years, she's committed multiple felonies. If your son is still alive and he could expose her, what do you think she'd do?" The answer hit me like a punch to the gut. She'd keep him quiet, by any means necessary. Detective Morrison nodded. "We need to find him before Angela realizes. We're closing in." I sat there in my truck, engine running, trying to process what I'd just heard. For 6 years, I'd been grieving a son who might still be alive. For 6 years, I'd been paying a woman who might have been keeping him prisoner. What do we do now? Now we investigate, carefully, quietly, and we hope we're not too late. Detective Morrison gathered her things. "I'll be in touch within 24 hours. In the meantime, act normal. Don't let Angela know you're suspicious. And whatever you do, don't confront her about any of this." She got out of my truck and walked back to her car. I sat there watching her drive away, my mind reeling. Sophie was my granddaughter. If Michael was still alive, she was the link between us. And if Angela was keeping him somewhere, Sophie would know about it, even if she didn't understand what she was seeing. That evening, Detective Morrison came to my house with a folder full of documents and a laptop computer. I'd called her after spending the afternoon thinking about everything she'd told me. The more I thought about it, the more things started making sense in ways I didn't want them to. I've been digging deeper into Angela's finances, she said. Setting up at my kitchen table, what I found is extensive. She opened the laptop and pulled up bank records. Angela has 3 accounts, one local checking account where your payments go, one savings account with about $15,000, and one account in the Cayman Islands with $95,000. My throat went tight. The insurance money, plus some of what you've been sending her. She's been skimming about $8,000 a year from your payments and funneling it offshore. I stared at the numbers on the screen. 6 years of trust. 6 years of believing I was helping my granddaughter, and Angela had been stealing from both of us. There's more, Morrison continued. She pulled out a surveillance photo. We've been watching Angela for 3 weeks. She's been meeting regularly with this man. The photo showed Angela sitting in a coffee shop with a man I didn't recognize. Mid-30s, dark hair, expensive clothes. They looked comfortable together, close. His name is Victor Russo. He's got a record: insurance fraud, identity theft, forgery. He's been connected to at least 4 other fake death schemes over the past 10 years. You think he's the one who planned this? I think he's the one who taught Angela how to do it. And I think he's been her partner from the beginning. Detective Morrison pulled out another document. This is a lease agreement for a warehouse space on Industrial Road. It's in Victor's name, but Angela's been making the payments, $800 a month for 6 years. What's in the warehouse? That's what we need to find out. But based on the timing of the lease, it was signed 3 days after Michael's supposed death and Sophie's drawings of her father in a dark place. I think we know. The anger hit me so hard I couldn't breathe. For 6 years, I'd been paying Angela to take care of Sophie while Michael was locked up somewhere, unable to contact his family, unable to see his daughter grow up. How do we get him out carefully? If we go in without proper evidence, Angela and Victor will claim they don't know anything about it. And if Michael is in that warehouse, they might hurt him before we can reach him. Morrison pulled out a small recording device. We need them to confess on record. Admissible in court. How? We set a trap. We make Angela think she's won, that you're not suspicious, that you trust her completely. And then we get her talking. I looked at the device. It was smaller than a quarter. What do I have to do? Call her. Tell her you've been thinking about Michael's birthday next month. Tell her you want to do something special for Sophie, and you're thinking about giving Angela extra money to make it happen. You want me to offer her more money? I want you to offer her $40,000. Tell her it's from Michael's life insurance policy, a policy that doesn't actually exist, but she won't know that. Tell her you just got the payout and you want to share it with Michael's family. Morrison leaned forward. If Angela thinks there's more money available, she'll get greedy. And greed makes people careless. What if she just takes the money and runs? She won't. Not yet. She's got a good thing going with your regular payments. She won't want to kill that income stream until she's sure she can get everything she can out of you. I picked up the recording device. When do we do this? Tomorrow. But first, we're going to put some surveillance on that warehouse. If Michael is in there, I want to know before we make our move. The next morning, Morrison and I drove to Industrial Road. The warehouse district was exactly what you'd expect: large, anonymous buildings surrounded by chain link fences and security cameras. Perfect place to hide something you didn't want found. Building 447 was at the end of a row, slightly separated from the others. Single story, brick construction, few windows, 2 cars in the parking lot, a sedan and a pickup truck. That's Angela's car, I said, pointing to the sedan. Morrison pulled out binoculars, and the pickup is registered to Victor Russo. We parked across the street behind a delivery truck and waited. An hour passed. Then the side door of the warehouse opened, and Angela came out. She looked around carefully before walking to her car. Even from a distance, I could see the tension in her body language. She was afraid of something. She's checking to make sure she wasn't followed, Morrison said. That's not normal behavior for someone visiting a legitimate business. Angela got in her car and drove away. Victor came out 20 minutes later, also looking around before getting in his truck and leaving. There's definitely something in there, Morrison said. Question is, what? We waited another hour to make sure they didn't come back. Then Morrison made a phone call. This is Detective Morrison. I need a surveillance unit at 447 Industrial Road. Round-the-clock monitoring. If anyone goes in or out of that building, I want to know immediately. She hung up and looked at me tonight. You make the call to Angela. Tomorrow we see what she does with the information. That evening I sat in my living room staring at my phone. The script Morrison had given me was simple, but my hands were shaking as I dialed Angela's number. She answered on the 3rd ring. Carl, is everything okay? Angela? Hi, yeah, everything's fine. I wanted to talk to you about something. What's that? I took a deep breath. I got some news today about Michael's life insurance. There was a policy through the union that I didn't know about. The payout just came through. Silence on the other end. How much? She asked. $40,000, and I want to share it with Michael's family. With you and Sophie. That's very generous, Carl. Michael would have wanted his family taken care of. I'm thinking I could give you the whole amount for Sophie's college fund or whatever you think is best. Another pause. When would you be able to do that? I could have the check ready by Friday. Would you like me to drop it off? Actually, Angela said, and I could hear something change in her voice. Maybe we should meet somewhere else. There's something I need to tell you about Michael. Something I should have told you years ago. My heart started pounding. What kind of something? It's complicated. Can we meet tomorrow night? Somewhere private where we can talk? Sure. Where do you know the warehouse district on Industrial Road? There's a place there where I sometimes go when I need to think about Michael. Morrison had been right. The mention of money had made Angela careless. I'll text you the address, Angela continued. Meet me there at 800. Angela, what is it you need to tell me? Tomorrow night, Carl. I promise after tomorrow you'll understand everything. The line went dead. I immediately called Morrison. She took the bait. I said, she wants to meet at the warehouse tomorrow night. Perfect. That gives us 24 hours to get everything in place. What if Michael is in there when we meet? What if Angela, Carl, Morrison interrupted? We'll have officers positioned around the building. You'll be wearing a wire. The second Angela says anything that confirms Michael is in that warehouse, we move in, and if something goes wrong, nothing will go wrong. We've done this before. But as I hung up the phone, I couldn't shake the feeling that after 6 years of lies, tomorrow night would finally bring the truth, whatever that truth might be. I didn't sleep that night, kept thinking about Michael, about Sophie, about all the signs I'd missed over the years. Angela's quick move to start dating after the funeral, her request for money but never any updates about how it was being used. The way she kept me at arm's length, never inviting me for dinner or family occasions. And Sophie, poor Sophie, growing up thinking her father was dead when he might have been locked up somewhere just a few miles away from her house. The next day dragged by. I tried to focus on work, but I kept checking my phone waiting for updates from Morrison. She'd texted me around noon to say the surveillance team was in place and that Angela had visited the warehouse twice that morning. Both visits were short, she'd written, less than 30 minutes each. She's definitely preparing for something. At 500, Morrison called. We're ready, she said. Meet me at the diner on 5th Street at 6:30. I'll get you wired up and go over the plan one more time. The diner was nearly empty when I arrived. Morrison was sitting in a corner booth, her back to the wall, watching the door. She looked like what she was, a cop who'd spent years dealing with dangerous people. How are you feeling? She asked as I sat down. Scared? Angry? I don't know. That's normal. What you're about to do takes courage. She pulled out a small device that looked like a button. This goes under your shirt collar. It'll pick up everything within 20 feet. We'll be listening from 3 different positions. What if Angela realizes I'm wearing it? She won't, unless you tell her there's no way for her to know. Morrison attached the device and tested the signal. Her voice came through a small earpiece she gave me. Can you hear me? I nodded. Good. Now here's what's going to happen. You'll go to the warehouse at 8:00. Angela will probably start with some story about Michael, something designed to make you feel sorry for her. Let her talk, ask questions, but don't be aggressive. We need her to admit what she's done. What if she doesn't? She will. Angela thinks you're a trusting old man who she's been manipulating for 6 years. She won't expect you to be suspicious. And when people feel safe, they talk. Morrison handed me a car key fob. This is a panic button. If anything feels wrong, if Angela threatens you, or if the situation gets dangerous, press this. We'll be through that door in 30 seconds. I clipped it to my belt. What should I expect when I go in there? Expect Angela to lie, but also expect her to eventually tell you the truth. And Carl, Morrison's voice was serious. If Michael is really in that warehouse, if he's been held there for 6 years, he's going to be different. 6 years of imprisonment changes a person. Be prepared for that. I nodded, though I wasn't sure I could be prepared for seeing my son after thinking he was dead for so long. It's time, Morrison said, checking her watch. Remember, we'll be listening to every word. You're not alone in there. I walked across the parking lot to the warehouse. The building looked even more ominous at night, with only a single light over the side entrance. I tried the door. Unlocked. Inside, the warehouse was larger than I'd expected. High ceilings, concrete floors, shelves stacked with boxes and equipment. But in the back corner, someone had set up what looked like a living space, a card table, 2 folding chairs, a small refrigerator. Angela was sitting at the table, her back to me. She didn't turn around when I came in. Carl, she said quietly, thank you for coming. I walked over and sat across from her. Up close, she looked different, older, more tired. Like the past 6 years had been harder on her than I'd realized. You said you had something to tell me about Michael? She finally looked at me. Her eyes were red like she'd been crying. "I've been lying to you for 6 years," she said. My heart stopped. What kind of lies? Michael didn't die in that accident. Even though I'd suspected it, even though Morrison had prepared me for this possibility, hearing it confirmed felt like a physical blow. Where is he? Angela gestured toward the back of the warehouse where I could see a door marked storage. He's here. He's been here for 6 years. The anger that hit me was so intense I had to grip the edge of the table to keep from standing up. You've been keeping him prisoner? It's not that simple. It's exactly that simple. I snapped, "Where is my son?" "Carl, please let me explain." "Explain what?" "How you've been taking my money while keeping Michael locked up. How you let Dorothy die thinking her son was dead. How you've been lying to Sophie for her entire conscious life." Angela started crying. "You don't understand. It wasn't supposed to be like this." "Then how was it supposed to be?" She wiped her eyes. "Michael found out about Victor and me, about the affair. He was going to divorce me. Take Sophie. I would have lost everything." "So you faked his death." Victor said it was the only way, that if Michael disappeared, if everyone thought he was dead, I could keep Sophie and start over with the insurance money and my money. She nodded. Victor knew people who could help, people who could make it look real, and Michael just went along with this. Michael didn't have a choice. The implication of that statement made my blood run cold. You've been holding him against his will for 6 years. We told him if he ever tried to leave, if he ever contacted anyone, we'd hurt Sophie. I stood up so fast the chair fell over. You threatened your own daughter? Victor threatened her. I never wanted any of this to go this far. Through the earpiece, I could hear Morrison's voice. Keep her talking. Get her to admit everything. Angela, I said, forcing myself to stay calm. Where exactly is Michael? She pointed to the storage door. He's back there. There's a room, Victor. Victor made sure he couldn't leave. I want to see him, Carl. I don't think I want to see my son. Now Angela stood up slowly and led me to the storage door. She pulled out a key and unlocked it. Behind the door was a short hallway with another door at the end. This one had multiple locks. Angela opened them one by one. Michael, she called softly. Someone's here to see you. The door opened, and I saw my son for the first time in 6 years. He was thinner than I remembered. His hair was longer, and he had a beard. But it was definitely Michael, my son, alive. He looked at me for a long moment like he couldn't believe what he was seeing. Dad, I pulled him into a hug and felt him collapse against me. He was shaking. I thought I'd never see you again, he whispered. It's okay, I said, my voice breaking. It's going to be okay now. Sophie, he said urgently, is Sophie okay? They told me if I tried to leave, they'd hurt her. She's fine. She's the one who led me to you. Michael's eyes widened. What? She kept drawing pictures of you in a dark place. She knew something was wrong. Behind us, Angela was crying harder now. I'm sorry, she kept saying, I'm so sorry. Through the earpiece, I heard Morrison's voice. We have enough. We're coming in. But before I could respond, I heard footsteps in the main warehouse, heavy boots on concrete. Angela, a man's voice called out, what's taking so long? Victor Russo appeared in the doorway of the storage room. He was bigger than I'd expected, with the kind of build that came from years of physical work. When he saw me with Michael, his expression changed from curiosity to anger. What the hell is this? He demanded. Victor, I can explain. Angela started. Explain what? Why you brought the old man here, why you're showing him everything. Victor stepped into the room and I could see something metallic in his hand. A wrench, maybe, or some kind of tool. You stupid woman, he said to Angela. Do you realize what you've done? Through the earpiece, Morrison's voice was urgent. Carl, get out of there now, but there was nowhere to go. Victor was blocking the only exit from the storage room. Dad, Michael said quietly, get behind me. Nobody's going anywhere, Victor said. He raised the wrench. We've got a problem now and problems need solutions. Victor, don't, Angela pleaded. We can fix this. We can make him understand. Make him understand what? That we've been keeping his son locked up for 6 years while stealing his money? You think he's going to just walk away from that? Victor looked at me. You shouldn't have come here, old man. This was none of your business. My son is my business. Your son was supposed to be dead, and now, because of your meddling daughter-in-law here, we've got a real mess on our hands. I could hear sirens in the distance getting closer. Victor heard them too. His expression changed from anger to panic. You called the cops? I didn't, Angela started. Then how did they? Victor stopped, staring at me. You're wearing a wire. It wasn't a question before I could answer. Victor lunged forward with the wrench. Michael stepped between us, catching Victor's wrist and twisting it. The wrench clattered to the floor. 6 years, Michael said through gritted teeth, struggling with Victor. 6 years you kept me locked up here. Victor was stronger, but Michael had desperation on his side. They grappled in the narrow doorway while Angela screamed for them to stop. The sirens were getting louder now. Through the main warehouse, I could see flashing red and blue lights through the high windows. "Police, this is Detective Morrison." The voice echoed through the warehouse. Building is surrounded. Victor broke free from Michael and ran toward the back of the storage room. There was another door there, one I hadn't noticed before. He yanked it open and disappeared into the darkness beyond. "Dad, are you hurt?" Michael asked, breathing hard. "I'm fine." "Are you?" Before he could answer, the storage room filled with police officers in tactical gear, weapons drawn, moving fast and professional. "Carl Brennan?" None of them called out here. Detective Morrison appeared behind them. "Everyone okay?" Victor ran, I said, pointing to the back door. "Through there." Morrison spoke into her radio. "Suspect fleeing through rear exit. All units converge on the back of the building." She turned to Angela, who was pressed against the wall, sobbing. "Angela Brennan, you're under arrest for kidnapping, fraud, conspiracy, and false imprisonment." The Miranda rights sounded strange echoing in that concrete room where my son had been held prisoner for 6 years. 2 officers led Angela away. She didn't resist, just kept crying and saying "I'm sorry" over and over. Michael Morrison said gently, "I'm Detective Morrison. Are you injured?" "Do you need medical attention?" Michael shook his head. "I'm okay. I can't believe this is real. We're going to need to take you to the hospital for a checkup. After 6 years, we need to make sure you're physically okay. Then we'll need a statement about what happened here. What about Sophie?" Michael asked suddenly. "Where is she? Is she safe?" "She's with my sister," I said. "Dorothy's sister? She's been taking care of her during all this. Can I see her?" Morrison nodded. "After the hospital? After we get your statement. I promise, you'll see your daughter soon." Through Morrison's radio, we heard suspect in custody. Victor Russo apprehended attempting to flee through the industrial park. Relief flooded through me. It was over. The next few hours passed in a blur. Paramedics checked Michael over, pronounced him physically healthy but underweight and dehydrated. The warehouse was processed as a crime scene, with investigators photographing everything and collecting evidence. Michael's room was heartbreaking to see in the harsh light of the police photographer's flash. A narrow space barely big enough for a bed, a bucket, and a few personal items. No windows, a single bulb hanging from the ceiling. "He brought me food twice a week," Michael told Detective Morrison as we sat in the back of an ambulance. "Sometimes Angela would come with him. She'd tell me about Sophie, show me pictures sometimes. Did they ever threaten you directly?" "Every few months, Victor would remind me what would happen to Sophie if I tried to escape. He had photos of her at school, at your house, at the park. He wanted me to know he could get to her anytime." Morrison made notes. "What about Angela? What was her role in keeping you here?" Michael was quiet for a moment. "At first, I think she felt guilty. She'd cry when she visited, say she was sorry. But as time went on, she got colder, like she'd convinced herself this was necessary." "Did you know about the money your father was sending her?" "What money?" I explained about the $25,000 a year, the $150,000 total over 6 years. Michael's face went pale. "Dad, no, I had no idea. All this time you thought you were helping Sophie and they were just stealing from both of us." I finished. "It's not your fault, son. None of this is your fault. The ride to the hospital gave us our first real chance to talk." Michael sat in the ambulance, staring at his hands. "I thought about you and Mom every day," he said quietly. "Wondered if you were okay, if you were taking care of Sophie. Victor told me Mom had a heart attack. 6 months after your supposed funeral, she died thinking you were gone." Michael's eyes filled with tears. "I'm so sorry, Dad. If I could have found a way to contact you, to let you know I was alive. You did what you had to do to protect Sophie. I understand that now. Is she okay?" "Really? Okay. She's amazing. Smart, brave, artistic. She draws pictures constantly. And she knew Michael. Somehow, she knew you weren't really gone." "What do you mean?" I told him about Sophie's drawings of Daddy in the dark place, about her whispered warning at the park, about how her innocent observations had led me to question everything. "She saved you," I said. An 8-year-old girl saved her father by refusing to accept what everyone told her was true. At the hospital, doctors confirmed what the paramedics had found. Michael was malnourished and had some vitamin deficiencies, but nothing that couldn't be treated. He'd need time to build his strength back up, but he was going to be fine. "When can I see Sophie?" was his first question to the doctor. "Tomorrow," Morrison said, appearing in the doorway of Michael's room. "We've processed the crime scene, taken your statement. There's no medical reason to keep you here overnight, but I'd recommend it. You've been through a trauma. I want to go home," Michael said. "I want to see my daughter." Morrison looked at me. "It's your call. Medically, he's cleared to leave." "My house," I said. "Come home with me tonight. Sophie will be there tomorrow." Michael nodded. That sounds perfect. As we left the hospital, I realized I was about to bring my son home after 6 years of believing he was dead. Tomorrow, Sophie would be reunited with the father she'd never stopped believing was alive. It felt like a miracle. It felt like justice. It felt like the beginning of healing a family that had been shattered by lies and greed and manipulation. But mostly it felt like coming home. That night, Michael sat on my couch and looked around the living room like he was seeing it for the first time. In a way, the last time he'd been in this house, Dorothy was still alive. Sophie was barely 2 years old. The world was completely different. It looks the same, he said softly. I haven't changed much since your mom died. Didn't see the point. He noticed the urn on the mantle. Is that supposed to be me? Coffee grounds and cinnamon, I said. Morrison's team tested it. That's what they gave us to bury. Michael shook his head. I can't believe they did that to you, to Mom. Your mother never got over losing you. She died believing her son was gone. That's something I'm going to have to live with for the rest of my life. Dad, you couldn't have known. None of us could have known what Angela was capable of. We talked until almost 3 in the morning. 6 years of catching up. 6 years of stories and memories and pain. Michael told me about the warehouse, about the long days and nights, about how he'd survived by thinking about Sophie, about planning what he'd say to her when he finally saw her again. I told him about Dorothy's last months, about Sophie's drawings, about the business and the money, and how I'd never suspected anything was wrong until Sophie whispered those words at the park. She's the reason you're free, I said. That little girl never stopped believing you were alive. Michael cried then. Real tears for the first time since we'd found him. I've missed so much. Her first day of school, her birthdays, learning to read everything. You'll have time now. All the time in the world. The next morning, Dorothy's sister Margaret brought Sophie over. I watched through the window as they pulled into the driveway, Sophie bouncing in the back seat. She doesn't know, I said to Michael. Margaret told her I had a surprise for her, but she doesn't know what. Michael positioned himself in the living room where Sophie would see him the moment she walked through the door. Sophie burst through the front door the way she always did, talking before she was even inside. Grandpa, Aunt Margaret says you have a surprise, and I've been guessing all morning, but she won't tell me what it is, and I thought maybe it was a puppy, but she said it was better than a puppy, and I don't know what's better than a puppy except maybe. She stopped mid-sentence, stopped moving, stopped breathing for a moment. Michael was standing there in the living room, wearing clothes I'd given him from his old room, looking like the father she remembered, but older, thinner, changed by what he'd been through. Hi, sweetheart, he said quietly. Sophie stared at him for what felt like forever. Then she looked at me, then back at him, like she was trying to make sense of what she was seeing. Daddy? Yes, baby, it's me. She ran to him then, launched herself into his arms like she'd been saving up all her energy for this moment. Michael caught her and held her tight, both of them crying now. I knew you weren't gone, she said into his shoulder. I knew it. I told Grandpa and he found you. You did perfect, Sophie. You saved me. Margaret and I gave them space, sitting in the kitchen while father and daughter reunited in the living room. Through the doorway, I could see Sophie showing Michael her drawings, including the ones of Daddy in the dark place. She never stopped drawing those, Margaret said quietly, even when the therapist said it might be unhealthy, that she needed to accept her father's death. Sophie insisted he wasn't really gone. Children see things adults miss, I said, echoing Morrison's words. How is he, really? Physically, he's okay. Emotionally, it's going to take time. 6 years is a long time to be held prisoner, and Angela, she and Victor are both in custody. They'll be going to prison for a very long time. Margaret shook her head. I never liked her. From the day Michael brought her home, something felt off. But I thought it was just because she wasn't Dorothy's choice for him. We all missed the signs. Angela was very good at playing the grieving widow. From the living room, we could hear Sophie explaining her artwork to Michael, her voice excited and happy in a way I hadn't heard in years. This one is you in the dark place, she was saying, and this one is you coming home. I drew it last week because I had a feeling. What kind of feeling? That Grandpa was going to find you soon. I don't know why. I just knew. Later that afternoon, Detective Morrison stopped by with updates on the case. Angela's confessed to everything, she said, sitting at my kitchen table. Fraud, kidnapping, conspiracy. Her lawyer's working on a plea deal, but she's looking at 15 to 20 years federal time. What about Victor? Victor's fighting everything. Claims he was just Angela's boyfriend and didn't know about the kidnapping. But we've got evidence placing him at the warehouse dozens of times over 6 years. Phone records showing coordination with Angela. Bank records showing his involvement in moving the money offshore. Morrison pulled out a folder. There's something else. The other victims in this fraud ring, we've identified 7 other families that were targeted over the past 10 years. Total stolen, over $1.2 million. Other people like me, Grieving family members mostly, people who lost someone and were vulnerable to financial exploitation. Victor and Angela weren't just criminals, they were predators who fed on people's grief. Will those families get their money back? Some of it. We've frozen the offshore accounts and recovered about $400,000. It'll be divided among the victims based on how much they lost. Morrison closed the folder. Carl, what you did took courage, wearing that wire, confronting Angela, trusting us to get you and Michael out safely. Because of you, 7 other families will get some kind of justice too. I didn't do it for them. I did it for Michael and Sophie. I know, but the result is the same. You stopped a criminal operation that had been running for a decade. That evening, Michael helped me make dinner while Sophie drew pictures at the kitchen table. Normal family things that we'd been denied for 6 years. What happens now? Michael asked as we chopped vegetables for a stew. Now you heal. You get to know your daughter again, you figure out what you want to do with the rest of your life. I want to work with you at the construction company. If you'll have me, are you sure? After what you've been through. Dad, I've had 6 years to think about what I want. I want to work with my hands. I want to build things. I want to be close to family. I want a normal life. Then you've got it. Sophie looked up from her drawing. What are you making, Daddy? It's a picture of our house, Michael said, looking at her artwork. Me and you and Grandpa. Do you like it? I love it. Can I hang it on my bedroom wall? You have a bedroom? I do now. Grandpa's going to help me fix up my old room. Sophie smiled. Can I help too? I wouldn't do it without you. The trial began 3 months later. Those 3 months between the arrests and the trial had been a time of healing and rebuilding. Michael slowly put on weight, got stronger, learned to sleep through the night without nightmares. Sophie went to counseling to help her understand what had happened and why her mother had done what she did. Most importantly, father and daughter got to know each other again. Michael had missed so much Sophie's first day of school, learning to read, losing her first tooth, hundreds of small moments that make up a childhood. But they had time now, all the time in the world. The trial was held at the federal courthouse downtown, a massive stone building with high ceilings and echoing halls. The kind of place that reminded you how serious this all was. Angela pled guilty to all charges in exchange for a reduced sentence. 15 years federal prison for kidnapping, fraud, conspiracy, and false imprisonment. She wouldn't be eligible for parole for 12 years. Victor fought every charge. His trial lasted 2 weeks with testimony from Michael, myself, Detective Morrison, and several other victims of their fraud ring. The evidence was overwhelming. Bank records, surveillance footage, recorded phone calls, the wire recording from the warehouse. I testified on the second day, walked into that courtroom wearing the same suit I'd bought for Michael's fake funeral 6 years earlier. The prosecutor asked me to tell my story. I told the jury about believing my son was dead, about sending Angela $25,000 every year, about Sophie's drawings and warnings, about finding Michael alive in that warehouse. The defense tried to suggest I should have been more suspicious, that somehow my trust made me partially responsible. The prosecutor shut that down quickly. She showed the jury bank records, transfer receipts, documentation of every payment. She demonstrated that I had done exactly what any grieving father would do, trusted family, and tried to help his granddaughter. Michael testified on the third day. I watched from the gallery as he walked to the witness stand. He'd gained back most of the weight he'd lost, and he looked healthy, strong. But when he began to speak about those 6 years in the warehouse, his voice trembled. He told them about the locked room, about the threats against Sophie, about believing he would never see his family again. He spoke about missing his daughter's childhood, about not being able to mourn his mother's death properly, about the psychological torture of being kept alive but hidden from everyone he loved. When he finished, the courtroom was silent. Victor's attorney tried to portray Victor as just Angela's boyfriend who got in over his head. The wire recording destroyed that argument. Victor's voice was clear and cold on that tape, threatening Michael and me, talking about problems needing solutions. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. On February 28th, they returned their verdict, guilty on all counts. Victor Russo was sentenced to 25 years in federal prison without possibility of parole. Angela got her 15 years as part of her plea agreement. Both were ordered to pay restitution, the full $150,000 to me, plus an additional $100,000 to Michael for false imprisonment and psychological damages, plus restitution to the other victims of their fraud ring. The money mattered less than the justice. For 6 years, they'd stolen from grieving families. For 6 years, they'd kept my son prisoner while I mourned him. Finally, they were being held accountable. 6 months after the trial, life had found a new normal. Michael lived in a small apartment about 10 minutes from my house. He worked with me at Brennan Construction, learning the business from the ground up. He was good at it, had always been good with his hands, even as a kid. Sophie spent 3 days a week with Michael, 4 days a week with Margaret. It wasn't perfect, but it was working. She was thriving in school, making friends, slowly healing from the trauma of learning the truth about her mother. Every Sunday, we visited Dorothy's grave together. The three of us, grandfather, son, granddaughter. Michael would bring flowers, Sophie would tell Dorothy about school, and I would update her on how her family was doing. I wish she could see this, Michael said one Sunday afternoon as we stood beside Dorothy's headstone. I wish she could know that Sophie and I are okay, that we're together. She knows, Sophie said with the confidence that only children have about such things. Grandma Dorothy watches us. She's happy now. I believed Sophie was right. After 6 years of grief and lies and separation, we were finally a family again. Brennan Construction was doing well. Having Michael working with me felt like coming full circle. We'd expanded into commercial renovation work, and business was steady. Michael had ideas for growth, maybe hiring more crews, maybe opening a second location. We could call it Brennan and Son Construction, he suggested, one day as we reviewed estimates. I like that, I said. Has a nice ring to it. Sophie was our biggest supporter. She'd come to job sites sometimes wearing a hard hat Michael bought for her, drawing pictures of the houses we were building. The crews loved her, and she loved being around the work. When I grow up, she announced, one day I'm going to work for Brennan and Daughter Construction. Sounds good to me, Michael said, but first you have to finish 3rd grade. The restitution money had come through, not all of it, but enough to matter. I put most of it into college funds for Sophie. The rest went to expanding the business and making improvements to my house. We converted the basement into a proper apartment for Michael. Nothing fancy, but comfortable and private. Having him close felt right after losing him for so long. Sometimes at night, I'd hear him talking to Sophie on the phone, reading her bedtime stories over FaceTime when she was staying at Margaret's. Normal father-daughter things that had been impossible for 6 years. The healing wasn't complete. Michael still had difficult days when the memories of the warehouse hit him hard. Sophie still asked questions about why her mother did what she did, and I still felt guilty about not figuring it out sooner. But we were together. We were building something new from the pieces of what had been broken, and every day it got a little easier. One evening in late summer, almost a year after we'd found Michael, I was sitting on my front porch when Leonard Walsh stopped by. Leonard had been my friend for 40 years, back when he was still a detective with the county police. He'd retired 5 years ago, but we still kept in touch. Heard through the grapevine that your case is making waves in law enforcement circles, he said, settling into the chair beside me. What kind of waves? The kind where other departments are looking at cold cases differently. Missing persons cases where the family accepted death certificates without seeing bodies. Insurance payouts that seemed too clean, too convenient. Leonard pulled out a small notebook. He always carried one, even in retirement. Morrison's people have identified at least 12 more potential victims of fraud rings like the one that targeted you. Families who might have loved ones who aren't really dead. The thought was overwhelming. 12 families going through what we went through. Maybe 12 families who will get their loved ones back because of what you did. I thought about that for a long time after Leonard left. The idea that our nightmare might help other families, that Sophie's drawings and my suspicions and Michael's survival might lead to other reunions. The next morning, Detective Morrison called. Carl, I wanted to give you an update. Remember the fraud network we talked about? We've made 6 more arrests in 3 different states. The investigation that started with your case has turned into a multi-state operation. Any other families like ours? 2 so far. A woman in Delaware whose husband supposedly died in a boating accident 4 years ago. Turns out he was being held in a fishing cabin upstate. And a man in Maryland whose daughter supposedly died in a car crash. She was living under a false identity in Virginia. Morrison paused. Carl, what you and Michael went through was horrible, but it's led to something bigger. We're dismantling an entire network of criminals who prey on grieving families. After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen thinking about justice and consequences, and how sometimes the worst things that happen to you can lead to the best outcomes for others. Michael found me there when he came over for lunch. He was doing that more often now, just dropping by, sharing meals, being present in ways that had been impossible for 6 years. You look thoughtful, he said, making himself a sandwich. I told him about Morrison's call, about the other families, about the expanding investigation. Good, he said simply. No one should have to go through what we did. Do you ever think about Angela, about why she did it? Michael was quiet for a moment sometimes. I think she was selfish and weak and got in over her head with someone dangerous. But mostly, I try not to think about her at all. Do you hate her? I used to. For the first few years in that warehouse, hate was about the only thing that kept me going. Hate and the thought of seeing Sophie again. He took a bite of his sandwich, but hate is exhausting, Dad. It takes too much energy. Energy I'd rather spend on Sophie, on you, on building a life. That afternoon, Sophie came over after school. She was in third grade now, reading chapter books, playing soccer, being a normal 8-year-old girl in most ways. But she was also wiser than most kids her age, more aware of how fragile families could be. "Daddy," she said as we worked together on her math homework, "do you ever miss being in that place?" The question caught both Michael and me off guard. "Miss it?" "No, sweetheart." "Why would you ask that?" "Because it was quiet there, and sometimes I think maybe quiet is nice when the world gets too loud." Michael set down his pencil and looked at his daughter. "Sophie, being alone isn't the same thing as being peaceful. I wasn't quiet in that place, I was trapped. There's a big difference, but now you have to worry about bills and work and grown-up things. And I also get to hug you every day. I get to help you with homework. I get to watch you play soccer and read you stories and be your dad. All the grown-up worries in the world are worth that." Sophie considered this seriously. "Okay, but if you ever need quiet time, you can tell me. I'm good at being quiet when people need space. I know you are. And if I need quiet time, I'll ask for it. But right now, I need Sophie time. That's much more important." She smiled and went back to her math problems. That night, after Sophie had gone back to Margaret's house, Michael and I sat on the porch drinking beer and talking about the future. "I've been thinking about dating again," he said suddenly. "Yeah. Anyone in particular?" "No. But Sophie asked me the other day if I was ever going to get married again. And I realized I haven't even thought about it. For 6 years, I was focused on survival. For the past year, I've been focused on healing and reconnecting with Sophie. But maybe it's time to think about what comes next." "What did you tell her?" "I told her I wasn't sure, that I'd have to meet someone very special. Someone who would understand about our family and what we've been through." "And what did she say to that?" Michael laughed. "She said the woman would have to pass a test first. She'd have to be approved by Sophie and Grandpa, both smart girl." "She is. Sometimes I think she's smarter than both of us." We sat quietly for a while, listening to the sounds of the neighborhood settling in for the night. Porch lights coming on, dogs barking, the distant sound of traffic on the main road. "Dad," Michael said eventually, "thank you for what? For not giving up, for listening to Sophie, for believing in us enough to risk everything to find the truth. You don't need to thank me for that, you're my son. Sophie's my granddaughter. Family protects family, that's what we do, I know. But still, thank you." 2 years later, on a warm Saturday morning in May, I was teaching Sophie how to use a level on one of our job sites when Detective Morrison called with news that would change everything again. Carl, we found him, found who? Gary Wells, the morgue worker who helped with the fake death certificates. He's been hiding in Florida for the past year, but we finally tracked him down. Gary Wells was the missing piece of the puzzle. The man who had provided the body that was cremated in place of Michael, who had forged the paperwork, who had helped make the whole scheme possible. What's he saying? Everything. He's confessing to all of it in exchange for a reduced sentence. And Carl, he's got information about other cases. A lot of other cases. Morrison paused. He wants to meet with you, to apologize personally for what he did to your family. I wasn't sure I wanted to hear apologies from the man who had helped fake my son's death, but I was curious about the details, about how the whole thing had worked. "Where and when?" "County jail this afternoon if you're available." "Michael's welcome to come too if he wants." Michael didn't want to come. "I've heard enough confessions," he said when I told him about the meeting. "I don't need to see that man's face or hear his excuses, so I went alone." Gary Wells was smaller than I'd expected. Mid-40s, balding, the kind of man you wouldn't notice in a crowd. He sat across from me in the jail conference room, hands folded, not making eye contact. "Mr. Brennan," he said quietly, "I wanted to say I'm sorry. For what I did to your family, for what I helped them do." "Why?" I asked. "Why did you help them?" "Money. Victor paid me $5,000 to provide a body and forge the death certificate. At the time, it seemed like easy money. I told myself the person was already dead, that it wasn't really hurting anyone." He finally looked up at me. "I didn't know about your son being held prisoner. I thought it was just insurance fraud. I thought your son had really left town, started a new life somewhere, but you knew I was grieving. You knew my family believed Michael was dead." Wells nodded. "I knew. And I'm sorry for that too. I've got kids of my own now. I can't imagine what you went through." How many other families? 15 that I was directly involved with. Maybe more that Victor and Angela handled through other contacts. 15 families. 15 other people like me who had grieved for loved ones who might still be alive. Are you cooperating with the investigation? Completely. I've given them names, dates, locations, everything I know. Wells leaned forward. "Mr. Brennan, I know sorry doesn't fix anything, but I want you to know that seeing your family reunited, knowing that something good came out of this nightmare, it's changed how I think about what I did. I left the jail feeling empty rather than satisfied. Apologies were nice, but they didn't give me back the 6 years of believing my son was dead. They didn't bring Dorothy back. They didn't undo the damage to Michael and Sophie, but they did help other families. Over the following months, the information Wells provided led to 8 more arrests and the discovery of 3 more people being held against their will in various locations. One of them was a woman named Patricia Chen who had supposedly died in a house fire 3 years earlier. Her husband had been collecting life insurance while she was held in a converted storage unit 200 miles from her home. Her teenage daughter had never stopped believing her mother was alive, just like Sophie had never stopped believing about Michael. When I read about Patricia's reunion with her family in the newspaper, I thought about the strange way trauma and healing work, how our worst experiences can somehow lead to the best outcomes for others. How Sophie's refusal to accept what adults told her was true had saved not just Michael, but strangers we'd never met. That summer, Michael started dating a woman named Sarah who worked at the hardware store we frequented for supplies. She was divorced with a 10-year-old son named Jake, and she understood complicated family situations. Sophie approved of her immediately. "She's nice to me, but not fake nice," was her assessment, and she knows about tools. Sarah had heard our story, most people in town had by then, but she didn't treat Michael like a victim or ask him endless questions about the warehouse. She treated him like a man getting on with his life, which was exactly what he needed. Their relationship developed slowly, carefully. Michael was cautious about bringing anyone into our tight family circle, and Sarah was patient with that. She understood that trust didn't come easily after what we'd been through. By September, Sarah and Jake were joining us for Sunday dinners. Jake was fascinated by the construction business and started coming to job sites with us on weekends. Sophie enjoyed having someone closer to her age around, someone who thought her stories about finding her father were amazing rather than tragic. "It's like we're becoming a real family again," Sophie said one evening as we cleaned up after dinner. "But bigger, we were always a real family," Michael said. "Just smaller for a while. I know, but bigger is nice too." The business continued to grow. We hired 2 more crews and started taking on larger commercial projects. Michael had a natural talent for project management, and his experience had given him a patience and attention to detail that served us well. Brennan and Son Construction was painted on our trucks now, and we were building a reputation for quality work and reliability. Sometimes I'd catch myself thinking about how different things could have been if Sophie hadn't drawn those pictures, if I hadn't listened to her warnings. If Detective Morrison hadn't been investigating the fraud ring, if any number of small decisions had gone differently. But mostly I tried to focus on what was rather than what might have been. 3 years had passed since we found Michael in that warehouse. 3 years of healing, building, and learning to be a family again. Sophie was 11 now, in 6th grade, playing on the school soccer team and talking about wanting to be an architect when she grew up. "I want to design the buildings that Daddy and Grandpa construct," she announced one evening over dinner. "That sounds like a perfect plan," Sarah said. She and Michael had been together for over a year now, and the 4 of us, 5 counting Jake, had fallen into comfortable routines. Michael and Sarah were talking about marriage. Nothing official yet, but Sophie had started dropping hints about wanting Sarah to be her stepmother, and Jake was already calling Michael Dad half the time. "When are you going to ask her properly?" I asked Michael one Saturday as we worked on framing a new house. "Soon, I want to do it right. Sophie's been through enough changes. I want to make sure this one is something she's excited about, not worried about." "That girl's been planning your wedding since Sarah first came to Sunday dinner. She's not worried." Michael laughed.
"Yeah, she drew me a picture last week of what my wedding should look like. Very detailed specifications. The business was thriving."
We'd moved into a larger office space and hired an actual bookkeeper instead of me trying to manage the finances on my kitchen table. Brennan and Son Construction was becoming a real company, the kind that could survive and grow beyond just the 2 of us. "We should start thinking about what happens when you retire," Michael said one day as we reviewed quarterly reports. "I'm not ready to retire yet, I know, but you're 61 now. You won't want to be climbing ladders forever." He was right though, I wasn't ready to admit it. My knees were stiffer in the mornings, my hands more arthritic. The physical demands of construction work were getting harder. "Maybe we transition gradually," I suggested. "I move more into the business side, estimating and client relations. You handle more of the on-site supervision." "I'd like that, and maybe in a few years we hire a general manager, someone to handle the day-to-day operations." It felt good to plan for the future instead of just surviving day to day. That fall, Detective Morrison called with the news that Angela was being released early for good behavior and cooperation with ongoing investigations. "She'll be out in 6 months, Morrison said. "I wanted to give you and Michael advance notice. Is she allowed to contact Sophie?" Her parental rights were terminated as part of her plea agreement. She can't legally contact Sophie without court approval. "But I thought you should know she's been asking about her daughter." After I hung up, I sat in my truck for a long time before driving home. Angela had been in prison for 3 years, which meant she'd missed even more of Sophie's childhood. Sophie was a completely different person now than the 8-year-old who had last seen her mother. That evening, Michael and I talked about how to tell Sophie. She has a right to know, Michael said. But I don't want her to worry that Angela might show up unexpectedly. What if she wants to see her? Then we'll figure that out when it happens. But Sophie's 11 now. She's old enough to make some decisions about her own relationships. When we told Sophie about Angela's upcoming release, her reaction surprised us. Okay, she said simply, not looking up from her homework. Okay, Michael asked, that's it. Sophie set down her pencil and looked at both of us. I used to think about her a lot, about why she did what she did, about whether I should miss her or be angry at her. And now I mostly don't think about her at all. Sarah's been more of a mom to me than Angela ever was. And you're here, Daddy? Grandpa's here? I have a family. If she wants to be part of it someday, we can talk about it. But she doesn't get to just show up and expect everything to be normal. The wisdom of that statement coming from an 11-year-old left both Michael and me speechless. 6 months later, Angela was released. She moved to a halfway house in Philadelphia, about 90 minutes from us. She sent a letter asking to see Sophie, which we shared with our lawyer and Sophie herself. Sophie read the letter twice, then set it aside. I don't want to see her right now, she said. Maybe someday, but not right now. We respected her decision. Angela sent more letters over the following months. Apologies, explanations, requests for visits. Sophie read some of them, ignored others. She was processing her feelings about her mother in her own time, in her own way. I don't hate her, Sophie told me one day as we worked together in my workshop. But I don't really know her either. The mom I remember was pretending to be sad about Daddy being dead, so I don't know who she really is. That's very mature thinking. I learned it in therapy. Dr. Williams says it's okay to take my time figuring out how I feel about complicated people. Dr. Williams had been Sophie's therapist since we'd found Michael. She specialized in children who had experienced family trauma, and she'd helped Sophie navigate the complex emotions of learning her mother had lied to her for years. Meanwhile, life moved forward. Michael proposed to Sarah on Sophie's 12th birthday, presenting the ring in a box designed by Sophie herself. Sarah said yes, Jake cheered, and I gained a daughter-in-law who actually felt like family instead of a stranger exploiting our grief. The wedding was planned for the following spring. Small, family-focused, held in Dorothy's memory garden at the local church. Sophie would be the maid of honor. Jake would be the best man, and I would walk Sarah down the aisle since her father had passed away years earlier. It's like we're starting over, Michael said one evening as we planned the reception, but better this time, with people who actually love us instead of people who want to use us. I couldn't have agreed more. The wedding took place on a perfect April morning, the kind of spring day that makes you believe in new beginnings and second chances. Sophie had insisted on doing Sarah's makeup, and Jake had polished his shoes until they gleamed. I wore the same suit I'd bought for Michael's fake funeral, but this time it was for a celebration instead of mourning. Sarah looked beautiful walking down the aisle on my arm. She'd asked me to give her away since her own father was gone, and I was honored to do it. When I placed her hand in Michael's and stepped back, I could see Dorothy in my memory, smiling and crying at the same time the way she always did at weddings. Dearly beloved, the minister began, we are gathered here today to witness the union of Michael and Sarah, two people who have found love after loss, hope after heartbreak. The vows they'd written themselves were simple and honest. No flowery poetry or grand declarations, just promises to be present for each other, to build something real together, to love each other's children as their own. When Michael slipped the ring on Sarah's finger, Sophie started crying happy tears. Jake pumped his fist in the air when the minister pronounced them husband and wife. And I felt something I hadn't felt in years, complete peace with the present moment. The reception was held in the church fellowship hall, decorated with flowers from Dorothy's garden that Sophie and Sarah had tended together. About 50 people, family, friends from work, some of the crews from Brennan Construction, neighbors who had supported us through the dark years. During dinner, Sophie stood up to give a speech. She'd insisted on speaking despite being only 12 years old. I want to thank everyone for coming, she said, her voice clear and confident. 4 years ago, I thought my daddy was dead. I thought I'd never have a real family again. But families aren't just about who you're born to. They're about who shows up for you, who loves you even when things are scary, who helps you figure out how to be brave. She looked at Michael and Sarah. Daddy, you showed me that love is stronger than lies. Sarah, you showed me that some people can be trusted completely. Jake, you showed me that brothers can be chosen, not just born. Then she looked at me. And Grandpa, you showed me that sometimes adults need kids to remind them what's true. You listened to me when other people might not have. You believed me when I said Daddy wasn't really gone. That's the best gift anyone ever gave me. There wasn't a dry eye in the room. Later, as we cleaned up after the reception, Detective Morrison stopped by to congratulate the happy couple. She'd kept in touch over the years, updating us on the ongoing investigations and prosecutions that had grown out of our case. Any word on the latest arrests? I asked her 3 more convictions last month. The network you helped us uncover has led to 47 arrests across 8 states and 23 reunions between supposedly dead people and their families. Morrison looked around the room at our celebration. It's cases like this that remind me why I became a cop. Not just for the arrests, but for moments like this. Families put back together, justice served, life moving forward. Any update on Angela? She's working at a grocery store in Philadelphia. Staying out of trouble as far as we know. Still sends letters to Sophie occasionally. Sophie had developed her own system for dealing with Angela's letters. She read them with Sarah present, talked about her feelings with Dr. Williams, and usually wrote brief, polite responses that didn't encourage more contact, but weren't cruel either. She's not my mom anymore. Sophie had explained to me recently. Sarah's my mom now. Angela's just someone I used to know who made really bad choices. The clarity of that statement, the emotional intelligence behind it, never ceased to amaze me. 6 months after the wedding, Sarah was pregnant. The announcement came at Sunday dinner, with Jake and Sophie acting as excited co-conspirators who had helped plan the reveal. "We're having a baby," Sarah said, simply setting a pair of tiny construction boots in the middle of the table. Michael's face went through about 6 different emotions before settling on pure joy. "Really? Really?" Sophie bounced in her chair. "I'm going to be a big sister. A real big sister." Jake grinned. "And I'm going to be a big brother times 2. I felt something I hadn't expected, the prospect of being a grandfather again, but this time under normal circumstances. No tragedy, no lies, no manipulation. Just a family growing naturally, honestly, with love. The baby was due in February. We spent the fall preparing, converting the spare bedroom in Michael and Sarah's house into a nursery, with Sophie providing detailed input on color schemes and furniture placement. "The baby needs to be able to see the window," she explained seriously, "so they know about the outside world from the beginning, and why is that important?" Sarah asked, humoring her, because windows mean freedom. No one should ever be in a room without windows. Even 3 years later, the lessons from that warehouse were still shaping how Sophie saw the world. In November, we got word that Victor Russo had died in prison. Heart attack at age 44. No family claimed the body. The news should have made me feel something: satisfaction, closure, justice, but mostly I just felt empty about it. "Good," was Michael's only comment when I told him. "The world's a safer place." Sophie's reaction was more philosophical. "I feel sorry for him," she said. "Not because he died, but because he lived his whole life being the kind of person who hurt families. That must have been lonely. Sometimes the wisdom of that child took my breath away." Baby Emma was born on February 14th, Valentine's Day. 7 pounds, 3 ounces, with Michael's dark hair and Sarah's green eyes. When I held her in the hospital for the first time, I was struck by how different this felt from any of my previous experiences as a grandfather. With Sophie, I'd been grieving Michael and worried about Dorothy. The joy had been mixed with so much pain and uncertainty. But holding Emma, there was only pure happiness. No trauma, no fear, no lies. Just a healthy baby born into a family that was whole and honest and safe. "She's perfect," Sophie whispered, standing on her tiptoes to see her new sister better. "She really is," I agreed. Sophie had taken her role as big sister seriously from the moment Sarah started showing. She'd read books about babies, practiced diaper changing on her dolls, and made lists of all the things she wanted to teach Emma as she grew up. "First, I'll teach her to draw," Sophie had explained during one of our planning sessions. "Then I'll teach her about construction tools. Then about how to be brave when adults try to lie to you." That last item on the list had made both Michael and Sarah tear up a little. Emma's arrival also marked another transition for me. At 62, I was ready to step back from the physical demands of construction work. Michael and I had been planning this transition for months, and with a new baby in the house, the timing felt right. We hired Tom Mitchell as our general manager. He was a 35-year-old contractor with 15 years of experience and a reputation for honesty and quality work. More importantly, Sophie approved of him after he patiently answered her detailed questions about load-bearing walls and foundation design during his interview. "I like him," she announced after Tom left. "He explains things without being condescending, and he knows that girls can understand construction just as well as boys." "Did he pass the Sophie test?" Michael asked, with flying colors. "You should hire him." So we did. The transition worked smoothly. I moved into a consulting role, handling estimates and client relations while Tom managed the crews in day-to-day operations. Michael oversaw everything, but having Tom handle the details meant he could spend more time at home with Sarah and the baby. Brennan and Son construction continued to grow. We were working on bigger projects now, office buildings, retail spaces, even a small apartment complex. The company that had started as my father's small residential operation was becoming something larger and more substantial. Dad would be proud, I said to Michael one evening as we reviewed the quarterly reports. Grandpa Brennan would be amazed that we survived everything and came out stronger, he replied. Speaking of survival, I got a call from Detective Morrison today. They want to interview you for a documentary about the fraud investigation. Michael made a face. I don't really want to be on TV talking about the warehouse. That's what I told them. But apparently some of the other families who were reunited want to participate. They think sharing their stories might help prevent similar crimes. What do you think? I think we've done enough. We helped with the investigation. We testified at the trials. We don't owe the world our story for entertainment, but it might help other people. It might. Or it might just be exploitative. Either way, it's your choice. You're the one who lived through it. Michael thought about it for several days before deciding against participation. I want to focus on moving forward, not reliving the past, he said. Emma will never know about the warehouse unless we tell her. Sophie barely remembers those years. I don't want our family story to be defined by what Angela and Victor did to us. I respected his decision. We'd already helped law enforcement with their investigations and prosecutions. We didn't owe anyone else our trauma. That summer, Sophie turned 13. A teenager now, with opinions about everything, and a maturity that continued to surprise everyone around her. She was playing on the high school JV soccer team despite being only in 8th grade, and she'd started taking drafting classes at the community college on weekends. I want to be ready to design buildings by the time I graduate high school, she explained when I asked about her heavy course load. You've got plenty of time to figure that out. No, I don't. By the time I graduate high school, Emma will be 5. I want to be established in my career so I can help pay for her college when the time comes. Sophie, that's very thoughtful, but you don't need to worry about Emma's college fund. We'll handle that, I know you will, but I want to help too. Emma's my sister. Taking care of family is what we do. The echo of my own words from years earlier made me smile. Sophie had learned the lessons we'd tried to teach her about family loyalty and responsibility, but she'd learned them in a healthy context, not a manipulative one. In August, Angela sent a letter directly to me instead of Sophie. It was the first communication I'd received from her since she'd been released from prison. Mr. Brennan, it began, I know I have no right to ask you for anything, but I wanted to let you know that I'm getting married next month to a man who knows about my past and has forgiven me for it. I'm not asking to see Sophie. I understand why she doesn't want a relationship with me right now, but I wanted you to know that I'm trying to build a better life and that I think about her every day. I hope she's happy and healthy and knows that despite everything I did wrong, I do love her. Thank you for being the grandfather she deserved when I wasn't the mother she deserved. I showed the letter to Michael and Sarah. We decided to tell Sophie about it, but not pressure her to respond in any particular way. Good for her, was Sophie's reaction. I hope she's happy, but it doesn't change anything for me. That fall brought unexpected news. Detective Morrison called to tell me that the fraud investigation had been featured in a major law enforcement journal and that our case was being used to train investigators in other states about how to recognize similar schemes. You've become something of a legend in fraud investigation circles, she said with amusement. The grandfather who refused to give up until he found the truth. I don't know about legend, I just listened to my granddaughter. Well, that granddaughter of yours saved a lot of families. The techniques we developed investigating your case have led to 17 more reunions in the past year alone. 17 more families getting their loved ones back. 17 more children who didn't have to grow up believing their parents were dead. The number was staggering. There's something else, Morrison continued. The FBI wants to offer you a consultant position. They're developing a new unit that focuses specifically on death fraud and missing persons cases involving family exploitation. Me? I'm a retired construction worker. You're a man who knows how to ask the right questions and who understands how grief can be exploited. They don't need another detective. They need someone who thinks like a victim, who can spot the emotional manipulation tactics these criminals use. I told her I'd think about it. That evening, I discussed the offer with my family over Sunday dinner. Emma was 8 months old now, sitting in her high chair and making a mess of her mashed sweet potatoes while the adults talked. You should do it, Sophie said immediately. Think about how many families you could help. I'd have to travel sometimes. I might not be around as much. Grandpa, you've earned the right to do whatever makes you feel useful. We're all stable now. We don't need you to take care of us every single day anymore. But I like taking care of you every single day. Sophie smiled, and we like having you around. But we also want you to know that we'll be okay if you need to go help other people sometimes. Michael agreed. Dad, you've spent the last few years rebuilding our family. Maybe it's time to help some other families rebuild theirs. Sarah nodded. The company's running smoothly. Emma and I will be here when you get back from trips. And honestly, knowing you're out there helping prevent what happened to us from happening to others would make me feel safer in the world. So I said yes. The FBI training was intensive but fascinating. For 2 weeks, I learned about financial crime investigation, psychological manipulation tactics, and interview techniques. I wasn't going to be a federal agent, but I was going to be a specialized consultant who could help investigators understand the victim's perspective. My first case was in Ohio, a woman named Jennifer whose husband had supposedly died in a factory accident 3 years earlier. Her 10-year-old son had been drawing pictures of his father hiding in the basement, but social services and the local police had dismissed it as normal grief behavior. When I met with Jennifer, I saw myself 3 years earlier, devastated, trusting, desperate to believe that the people helping her had her best interests at heart. "Tell me about your son's drawings," I said. She showed me dozens of pictures. A man in a dark room, a man behind bars, a man calling for help. They looked exactly like Sophie's drawings of Michael. "Everyone says it's normal for children to fantasize that dead parents are still alive," Jennifer said. "Maybe? But maybe your son is seeing something the adults are missing." It took 6 weeks, but we found Jennifer's husband alive in a storage facility 40 miles away. He'd been held there by his brother and his brother's girlfriend, who had been collecting life insurance money and exploiting Jennifer's grief for financial support. The reunion was everything I'd hoped for: a father seeing his son again, a family made whole. Justice served. On the plane back to Pennsylvania, I thought about the strange path my life had taken. 4 years earlier, I'd been a grieving grandfather who thought his son was dead. Now I was helping other families avoid the same trauma we'd endured. When I got home, Sophie had a surprise waiting for me. She'd drawn a new picture, not of someone in a dark place, but of our whole family standing together in front of the house. Me, Michael, Sarah, Sophie, Jake, and baby Emma. All of us smiling under a bright yellow sun. "It's our family now," she explained, complete. I hung the picture on the refrigerator next to Emma's handprint and Jake's soccer schedule and Michael's work calendar. Just normal family things in a normal family home. That night, as I sat on my porch thinking about the Ohio case and the other families still out there who needed help, Michael joined me with 2 beers. "How was the first mission?" he asked.
Successful? We found him. Good. How do you feel about it? Like maybe I've found something useful to do with the rest of my life.
"Something that gives meaning to what we went through." Michael nodded. "Mom would have liked that. She always said you were too stubborn to let bad people win. Dorothy was a smart woman." We sat quietly for a while, listening to the sounds of our neighborhood settling in for the night. Inside the house, I could hear Sarah reading bedtime stories to Emma and Sophie helping Jake with his homework. Normal family sounds, safe sounds. The kind of sounds I'd thought I'd lost forever when I believed Michael was dead. "Dad," Michael said eventually, "thank you for not giving up on us. You don't need to thank me for that. You're my family. That's what family does for each other. I know, but still, thank you." Over the next 2 years, I consulted on 12 different cases across 6 states. Each one was different, but the patterns were always similar. Grieving families being exploited for money. Children who knew something was wrong, but weren't being believed. Criminal networks that preyed on people's trust and vulnerability. Not every case had a happy ending. Sometimes we were too late, and the missing person really was dead. Sometimes the evidence wasn't strong enough for prosecution. But in 8 out of those 12 cases, we reunited families who thought they'd lost each other forever. The work was emotionally challenging but deeply satisfying. I was using the worst experience of my life to prevent other families from going through the same trauma. Sophie was now 15, a sophomore in high school who had grown into a remarkable young woman. She was captain of the varsity soccer team, despite being one of the youngest players. She was taking college-level architecture courses and had already designed 3 houses that we'd actually built for clients who wanted something unique. "I want to specialize in affordable housing," she told me one evening as we worked on blueprints together in my workshop. "Houses that working families can actually buy, not just rich people. That's a noble goal. I learned it from you and Daddy. You've always built good houses for normal people. I want to design them." Emma was 2 now, walking and talking and getting into everything. She followed Sophie around like a devoted puppy, which Sophie tolerated with remarkable patience. "Emma's going to be an engineer," Sophie announced one day. "How can you tell? She's only 2. She took apart Jake's remote control car yesterday and put it back together. It works better now than it did before." Jake was 17, a senior in high school who planned to attend community college to study business management. He wanted to eventually join Brennan & Son Construction as our business operations manager. "I like building things," he said, "but I'm better with numbers and planning than I am with hammers and saws." Michael and Sarah were talking about having another baby. Emma had been such a joy that they wanted to give her a sibling close to her age. "What do you think, Dad?" Michael asked during one of our conversations about the future. Ready to be a grandfather again? I'm ready for whatever makes you and Sarah happy. But I have to say, watching you all be parents together has been one of the best parts of these past few years. It was true. Seeing Michael and Sarah raise Emma and Jake together, seeing Sophie step into her role as big sister, watching all of them navigate the normal challenges of family life instead of crisis and trauma, it was healing in ways I hadn't expected. That spring, Detective Morrison called with news that the federal task force I'd been working with was being expanded into a permanent unit. They want to offer you a full-time position, she said, based in Washington, but you'd travel about 40% of the time. Good salary, federal benefits, chance to help develop national protocols for investigating death fraud. It was tempting, the work was meaningful, and I was good at it. But it would mean moving away from my family, missing more of Emma's childhood, being less available for Sophie and Jake as they finished growing up. Can I think about it? Of course. But Carl, you should know that the unit wouldn't exist without the foundation you helped build. This is your chance to institutionalize the lessons learned from your case. That evening, I discussed the offer with my family. We were having one of our Sunday dinners, which had evolved over the years to include not just immediate family, but often friends from work, neighbors, and sometimes other families I'd met through my consulting work. Tonight, it was just us, me, Michael, Sarah, Sophie, Jake, and Emma in her high chair babbling happily as she smeared mashed carrots across her face. It sounds like an amazing opportunity, Sarah said after I explained the offer, but it would mean moving to Washington. So we'd visit all the time, Sophie said. And you could come home for holidays and important stuff. What if I missed Emma's first day of school, or your graduation, or Jake's wedding someday? Jake laughed. Grandpa, I'm 17. I'm not getting married anytime soon. And besides, we'll all be fine. We're not the same broken family we were 5 years ago. We're strong now. He's right, Michael said. We don't need you to hold us together anymore. We can hold ourselves together. And knowing you're out there helping other families would make all of us proud. What would Dorothy think? I asked, which was a question I still asked myself about important decisions. Mom would tell you to stop making excuses and go help people. Michael said without hesitation. She'd say you've earned the right to do work that matters to you. Emma chose that moment to throw a piece of carrot across the table, hitting me squarely in the forehead. Everyone burst out laughing. I think that's Emma's vote, Sophie said, wiping tears of laughter from her eyes. For or against. For, she's telling you to stop overthinking it. 2 weeks later, I accepted the position. I would start in the fall, which gave me the summer to spend with my family and to help train my replacement on the FBI task force. The decision felt right. Not easy, but right. For the first time since Dorothy died, I was choosing to do something solely because it felt meaningful to me, not because my family needed me to do it. They would be fine without me. That was both terrifying and wonderful to realize. That summer was one of the best of my life. I spent every day I could with my family, knowing that fall would bring a new chapter that would take me away from them more often. We took a family vacation to Lake Rayburn, the place where Michael had learned to swim and where Dorothy and I had always planned to scatter his ashes when we thought he was dead. Now we went there to celebrate life instead of mourning death. Sophie taught Emma how to splash in the shallow water. Jake and Michael built elaborate sandcastles that Emma delighted in destroying. Sarah and I sat on the beach watching 3 generations of family, enjoying themselves in the place that held so many memories. Dorothy would have loved this, Sarah said as we watched Sophie patiently help Emma collect shells. She would have. She always said the lake brought out the best in people. Do you miss her? Still? I mean, every day, but it's different now. For years after she died, I missed her because I was lonely and lost and needed her to help me figure out how to keep going. Now I miss her because I want to share good moments with her. That's a much better kind of missing someone, Sarah nodded. I understand that. I still miss my first husband sometimes, even though I love Michael completely. It's not about wishing things were different. It's about wishing the people we loved could see how good life turned out. On our last night at the lake, Michael and I took a walk along the shore while the others got Emma ready for bed. Are you nervous about Washington? He asked. A little. It's been a long time since I lived anywhere but Pennsylvania. And the work is important, but it's also emotionally challenging. Sometimes we don't save people in time, but sometimes you do, and that makes it worth it. I hope so. Michael picked up a smooth stone and skipped it across the water. Dad, can I tell you something I've never told anyone else? Of course, sometimes I feel guilty about being happy. Like I don't deserve to have this good life after what I put you and Sophie through. I stopped walking. Michael, you didn't put us through anything. Angela and Victor did that. You were a victim. I know that logically, but emotionally it's harder. You spent 6 years thinking I was dead. Sophie grew up without a father for most of her childhood, and now I get to have this perfect life with Sarah and Emma and the business and everything I wanted. And you think you don't deserve that. Sometimes we sat down on a fallen log that had been there since Michael was a child. The same log where Dorothy and I used to sit and watch him play in the water. Let me tell you something, I said. The fact that you survived 6 years in that warehouse without giving up, without losing hope, without becoming bitter, that's extraordinary. The fact that you came out of that experience still capable of love and trust and joy, that's a gift, not something to feel guilty about. But what if I had fought harder? What if I had found a way to escape sooner? What if Angela had never met Victor? What if I had been more suspicious about the insurance money? What if Dorothy had lived long enough to see you come home? We can't live our lives based on what if, son. We can only live based on what is. Michael was quiet for a long time, watching the water lap against the shore. What is, he said, finally, is that I have a daughter who's brilliant and brave and kind. I have a wife who loves me despite everything I've been through. I have a new daughter who makes me laugh every day. I have a stepson who trusts me to be his father. And I have a dad who never gave up on finding the truth. That's right. That's what is. And that's what you deserve. When we got back to the house, Sophie was sitting on the porch writing in a journal she'd been keeping for the past year. What are you writing about? I asked. Tonight. The lake, our family. I want to remember everything about this summer. Why this summer specifically? Because it's the last summer before things change again. Not in a bad way, she added quickly. But you're moving to Washington, and Jake's going to college next year, and Emma's getting old enough to have opinions about everything. This is the last summer when we're all exactly who we are right now. The wisdom of that observation, the understanding that moments of happiness are temporary and should be treasured, amazed me once again. Sophie had learned early that families could be broken and rebuilt, that nothing should be taken for granted. That's very wise thinking, Sarah said from the doorway. I learned it from watching our family put itself back together. I learned that good times are precious because they don't last forever. But I also learned that if you're patient and brave and keep loving each other, more good times will come. That night, as I lay in bed listening to the sounds of my family sleeping around me, Sophie and Emma sharing the room next to mine, Michael and Sarah down the hall, Jake on the fold-out couch in the living room, I felt a peace I hadn't known was possible. For 6 years, I had lived with the constant ache of believing my son was dead. For another 3 years, I had focused all my energy on healing and rebuilding our family. Now finally, I could rest in the knowledge that they would be fine without me. They were strong enough, independent enough, and loved enough to handle whatever came next. In the morning, we would pack up and drive home. In a few weeks, I would move to Washington and start the next chapter of my life. But tonight, we were all here together, safe and whole and happy. Tonight was perfect. The move to Washington was harder than I expected. Not because of the job, the work was challenging and meaningful from day one. But because after years of being needed every day by my family, suddenly I was 200 miles away and they were managing perfectly fine without me. My apartment was a small one-bedroom in Arlington, Virginia. Clean, functional, and lonely. I decorated it with photos of my family and a few pieces of furniture from my house in Pennsylvania, but it didn't feel like home. It felt like a place I stayed between trips to see my real life. The federal task force was everything Detective Morrison had promised. We were developing protocols for recognizing death fraud, training local law enforcement agencies, and actively investigating cases across the country. My role was to help investigators understand the victim's perspective, how grief could cloud judgment, what warning signs family members might miss, how to interview children who suspected something was wrong. 3 months into the job, I got a case that hit close to home, a 9-year-old boy in Oregon whose father had supposedly died in a logging accident. The boy kept insisting his father was hiding in the woods and had been drawing pictures of a man in a cabin surrounded by trees. The local police had dismissed it as fantasy. The insurance company had already paid out the claim. The family was preparing to move to another state to start over. But I looked at those drawings and saw Sophie's artwork from years earlier. The same desperate certainty that a missing parent wasn't really gone. The same frustration at not being believed by the adults around him. It took 6 weeks of investigation, but we found the father alive in a remote cabin 40 miles from where the supposed accident had occurred. He'd been held there by his own brother and the brother's business partner, who had staged the logging accident to collect insurance money and steal the father's share of their family timber business. The reunion was everything I'd hoped for, a boy getting his father back, a family saved from unnecessary trauma, justice served. But flying home that night, I felt something I hadn't expected, profound loneliness. I had just helped reunite a family, but I was going home to an empty apartment while my own family was 200 miles away. I called Michael from the airport. "How did it go?" he asked. "We found him. The boy was right all along. That's wonderful, Dad. You saved another family. Yeah, how's everyone there? Good. Emma said her first full sentence today. Sophie, help me build tower. Sarah's convinced she's going to be an engineer. What does Sophie think? Sophie thinks Emma's going to be whatever Emma wants to be and that our job is to make sure she has all the opportunities to figure that out. Sophie's a smart kid. She is. She asked me to tell you that she's proud of you for helping the boy in Oregon. How did she know about the Oregon case? Because she follows the FBI task force reports online. She wants to know about every family you help reunite. After I hung up, I sat in the airport thinking about the strange balance between meaningful work and personal isolation. I was helping families stay together while living apart from my own family. When I got back to my apartment, there was a package waiting for me. Inside was a new drawing from Sophie. Not of someone in a dark place, but of me in my FBI office, with the caption Grandpa helping families find each other. Below that, in her careful handwriting, thank you for using what happened to us to help other people. Mom Dorothy would be proud. That drawing went on my office wall the next day. 6 months into the Washington job, Sarah and Michael announced they were expecting their second child together. The baby was due in March, which meant I would need to figure out how to balance my work travel with being present for another grandchild's birth. Don't you dare miss this one being born. Sophie warned me during one of our weekly phone calls. Emma needs you to be there when her sibling arrives. I'll be there. Even if I have to quit my job to make it happen, you don't have to quit your job, just plan better. Babies don't usually arrive exactly on their due dates, so you'll have some flexibility. Since when do you know about baby scheduling? Since I've been reading books about it, I want to be helpful when the new baby comes. You're already helpful. You're the best big sister Emma could ask for. I'm practicing for being the best big sister 2 kids could ask for. Christmas that year was the first major holiday I'd spent away from my family since Dorothy died. The task force was working on an urgent case in California, and I couldn't get home in time. Michael called me on Christmas morning while they were opening presents. We saved your gifts for when you get back, he said. Emma keeps asking where Grandpa is. Tell her Grandpa is helping another little girl find her daddy. Is that what you're working on? Yeah. An 8-year-old in San Diego whose mother supposedly died in a car accident 6 months ago. The girl insists she saw her mother at a grocery store last week and I believe her. We're going to find out tomorrow. That case in San Diego turned out to be one of our most complex investigations. The mother had been kidnapped by her ex-husband's criminal associates and was being forced to work in identity theft schemes while her daughter and current husband believed she was dead. We found her on New Year's Eve, alive but traumatized, in a house with a dozen other people being held in similar circumstances. The reunion with her daughter was everything I'd learned to hope for in these cases. But it was also bittersweet, because I was watching another family heal while I was spending holidays away from my own family. I realized I needed to find a better balance. When I got back to Pennsylvania in January, I had a long conversation with my supervisor about modifying my role. I didn't want to quit the task force entirely. The work was too important, and I was good at it. But I needed to be home more, especially with a new grandchild coming in March. We worked out a compromise. I would handle cases within a 300-mile radius of Pennsylvania, which meant I could drive home most nights instead of staying in hotels. For cases farther away, I would provide remote consultation unless my physical presence was absolutely necessary. You're too valuable to lose, my supervisor said, but I understand that family comes first. Let's make this work. The new arrangement was perfect. I kept my apartment in Arlington, but started spending most nights in my own house in Pennsylvania. I could be present for family dinners again, help Sophie with her college applications, and be available when the new baby arrived. Sophie was now 16, a junior in high school, and already accepted into a summer architecture program at Penn State. She was everything I had hoped she would become: confident, kind, brilliant, and grounded. I've been thinking about my college essay, she told me one evening as we worked together in my workshop. I want to write about how children sometimes know things adults don't, and how important it is for adults to listen. That's a good topic. Very personal. It's not just personal, though, it's universal. Think about all the families you've helped where a child knew something was wrong but the adults weren't listening. She was right. In almost every successful case I'd worked on, there had been a child who had seen something or sensed something that the adults had dismissed. You should write that essay. It could help other kids feel confident about speaking up when something doesn't seem right. Baby Daniel was born on March 15th, exactly 3 weeks early. I was in my office in Arlington when Michael called, panicking, because Sarah had gone into labor and they were rushing to the hospital. Dad, can you get here? I'm leaving now. Don't let her have that baby without me. I made the drive from Arlington to Pennsylvania in record time, arriving at the hospital just as Daniel was making his entrance into the world. 7 pounds, 1 ounce, with Sarah's blonde hair and what looked like it might be Michael's stubborn chin. When I held him for the first time, I thought about Dorothy, about how she would have loved to see this moment. A healthy baby born into a family that was complete and honest and safe. No trauma, no lies, no fear, just pure joy at a new life beginning. Emma, now 3, was fascinated by her new brother but also slightly territorial. My baby, she announced when anyone tried to hold Daniel for too long. He's all of ours, Sophie corrected gently. But yes, he's especially yours because you're his big sister. Jake graduated from high school that spring and started working full-time for Brennan & Son Construction while taking business classes at night. He was dating a girl named Amanda who was studying to be a teacher, and they were talking about getting married after she graduated from college. Another wedding to plan, Sarah said with amusement when Jake told us about his plans. A small one, Jake said quickly. Nothing fancy, just family and close friends. That's what we said, Michael reminded him. And then your grandmother Margaret had opinions and Sophie had ideas. And before we knew it, we had 50 people. 50 people isn't that many for a wedding, Sophie said. Wait until I get married. I want everyone we've ever met to be there. Let's get you through college first, I said. Sophie was accepted to Penn State's architecture program with a partial scholarship. She would start in the fall, living on campus but close enough to come home on weekends. I'm going to miss having you around all the time, Michael told her. I'll be back every weekend and holidays, and probably some random Tuesdays when I miss Emma and Daniel too much to concentrate on studying. That summer, we had another family reunion at Lake Rayburn. This time there were 7 of us, me, Michael, Sarah, Sophie, Jake, Emma, and baby Daniel. 3 generations, multiple marriages, children born and children chosen, all of us connected by love rather than just biology. On our last night at the lake, Sophie and I took a walk along the shore, continuing a tradition that had started when Michael was a child. Are you happy with how everything turned out? She asked me. Most of the time, are you? Yes. But sometimes I think about all the families who aren't as lucky as we were. All the people who never get found, never get rescued, never get their happy endings. That's why the work I do matters. Every family we reunite is someone who gets to have what we have. Do you ever think about Angela? The question surprised me. Sophie rarely mentioned her biological mother anymore. Sometimes do you? Sometimes. I wonder if she's really happy with her new husband, or if she just traded one lie for another. I wonder if she ever thinks about Daniel and Emma and wishes she could know them. What do you think about those things? I think some people are good at loving and some people are good at pretending to love. Angela was good at pretending. Sarah is good at actually loving. That's a wise distinction. I learned it from watching our family. Real love doesn't manipulate or lie or use people. Real love protects and supports and tells the truth even when the truth is hard. As we walked back to the house, I thought about how perfectly Sophie had summarized everything we'd learned from our experience. Real love tells the truth. Real love protects instead of exploits. Real love builds up instead of tearing down. That was the difference between the family we'd lost and the family we'd built. 5 years later, I'm sitting on my porch on a warm Sunday evening in September, watching my family gathered in the yard. Sophie is home from college for the weekend, teaching Emma and Daniel how to throw a football. Jake and Amanda are setting up a picnic table for dinner. Michael and Sarah are chasing 2-year-old Daniel around the yard while he giggles and runs on unsteady legs. It's been 10 years since we found Michael in that warehouse. 10 years since our family was reunited. Sophie is 21 now, finishing her senior year at Penn State with a 4.0 GPA and job offers from 3 different architectural firms. Emma is 8, the same age Sophie was when she whispered that warning to me at the park. Daniel is 5, full of energy and questions and mischief. Jake and Amanda got married last summer. They're expecting their first child in December, which will make me a great-grandfather for the first time. The family keeps growing, keeps changing, keeps getting stronger. My work with the FBI task force has evolved over the years. I'm now 67, officially retired, but still consulting on the most challenging cases. In the past 5 years, we've reunited 127 families who thought they'd lost each other forever. We've dismantled 23 criminal networks that preyed on grieving families. We've developed protocols that are now used by law enforcement agencies in all 50 states. But the number that matters most to me isn't 127, it's 1. One family, ours, that was broken and rebuilt and made stronger than it ever was before. Brennan & Son Construction is now Brennan & Son and Daughter Construction because Sophie insisted that her future role in the company should be reflected in the name. She's designed 15 houses that we've built, all of them affordable homes for working families. Emma has announced that she wants to be an engineer doctor teacher when she grows up. Daniel wants to be a dinosaur, which we've assured him is also a worthy goal. Angela remarried and moved to California. She sends Christmas cards now, brief notes about her life, always asking about Sophie and the other children, but never pushing for more contact than Sophie is comfortable with. Sophie reads the cards, files them in a box, and occasionally mentions Angela in passing, usually in the context of being grateful that she has Sarah as her mother. I don't hate her anymore, Sophie told me recently, but I don't miss her either. She's just someone I used to know who made choices I don't understand. My real family is here. Victor Russo died in prison 8 years ago. His death didn't bring me the satisfaction I thought it would. Mostly, it just felt like the final closing of a chapter we'd all moved beyond years earlier. Gary Wells was released after serving 4 years. He sent me a letter when he got out, apologizing again and letting me know that he was working with a victim advocacy group, helping other families navigate the aftermath of fraud crimes. I can't undo what I did, he wrote, but I can spend the rest of my life trying to help clean up messes like the one I helped create. I wrote back and told him I appreciated his efforts. Forgiveness, I've learned, isn't about forgetting what happened or pretending it didn't matter. It's about choosing not to let other people's bad choices define the rest of your life. As the sun sets on this Sunday evening, Sophie comes over and sits beside me on the porch steps. Penny for your thoughts, Grandpa. Just thinking about how different everything is from 10 years ago. Different how? 10 years ago, I thought my son was dead. I thought my family was broken beyond repair. I thought I'd spend the rest of my life grieving for people I'd lost. And now? Now I'm watching my granddaughter teach my great-grandchildren how to play football while their parents set up dinner. Now I know that families can survive almost anything if they're honest with each other and willing to fight for what matters. Sophie leans against my shoulder. You know what I think? What's that? I think Mom Dorothy can see all this. I think she knows that her family didn't stay broken. I think she's proud of how we put ourselves back together. I think you're right. And I think she's especially proud of you for turning the worst thing that happened to us into a way to help other families avoid the same pain. I couldn't have done any of it without you, kiddo. You're the one who knew something was wrong. You're the one who wouldn't give up. You saved your father's life. We all saved each other. As the stars come out, my family starts moving inside for dinner. Sophie helps Emma and Daniel wash their hands. Jake and Amanda finish setting the table. Michael and Sarah work together in the kitchen, moving around each other with the easy familiarity of people who've built a life together based on truth instead of lies. I sit on the porch for a few more minutes, listening to the sounds of my family through the screen door. Laughter and conversation, the clink of plates and silverware, Emma explaining something important to Daniel in her serious 8-year-old voice. Normal family sounds. Safe sounds, the sounds of a family that's whole and honest and strong enough to weather whatever comes next. Tomorrow I'll go back to my work, helping other families find their way through the darkness of loss and manipulation and fraud. But tonight I'm exactly where I belong, surrounded by the people who matter most, in a home built on love instead of lies. 10 years ago my son died, or so I believed. Today my son is alive, my family is whole, and somewhere across the country another grandfather is probably getting ready to listen to his grandchild whisper something that adults might dismiss, but that could save a life. I hope he listens, I hope he believes, I hope he never gives up. Because families are worth fighting for. Truth is worth fighting for. And sometimes the smallest voice in the room is the one telling the biggest truth. That's what I've learned. That's what I know for sure. And that's why, even after all these years, I still remember every word Sophie whispered to me that day at the park. Grandpa, Daddy's not really gone. She was right. And because I listened to her, none of us are really gone. We're all still here, we're all still fighting, we're all still home. When the people closest to your family become the ones who hurt you most, remember this. Trust can be rebuilt, but it must be earned through truth, not manipulated through grief. Sometimes the smallest voice in the room carries the biggest truth. Listen to the children in your life, because their innocent observations might save everyone you love.